2 Kings chapter 2 and verse number 9 reads like this. And it came to pass when they were gone over, that Elijah said unto Elisha, Ask what I shall do for thee before I be taken away from thee. And Elisha said, I pray thee, let a double portion of thy spirit be upon me. Welcome to Double Portion Podcast.
I owe my life to you in every way, for you have paid the price for me.
Welcome back, DP Nation, to another episode. We are delighted to have you in the studio with us tonight. And joining us in the studio is the full ensemble. I think is how you say that, ensemble. We have Pastor Jeffrey Elder joining us from his studio in Greeley. And then in the studio here we have Bishop Elder, Brother Pound behind the cameras, running everything, and myself, and you, the wonderful listener. We are on episode 2 of the year 2024, and this year is already off to an amazing start. I believe just a few days ago in Greeley, there were a total of 5 baptisms in one service. Is that correct, Pastor Elder?
But when you get this, it will be a few days ago.
Yes. So there's exciting things going on in Colorado. We hope there's exciting things going on where you are, people being saved, reaching the lost, and we are in a time of growth and revival. And as one of my favorite podcasts, one of the things I love about how Brother Urshan opens and closes almost every Biblos is that he is always looking up. He is always talking about the great things, and I love that. And we are living in a good time, and tonight we are going to jump into a fun topic, maybe a little bit of a lighter topic, but definitely a challenging topic and a topic where all of us can get involved and participate in this, in the kingdom and the work of God. So we're going to turn this over to Bishop.
Well, welcome back, Double Portion Nation and Double Portion family, all of our friends and listeners and watchers that are enjoying the benefits and the blessings of God in the new year. Let us be the first to tell you that we are just ecstatic about what God is doing, not only for us, but for what He is doing for you all. The subject we want to approach tonight is one that probably Brother Jeffrey, Brother Mitchell, and Brother Pound will know more about than I do. Probably you guys would know more. I think we started doing live feeds in around 2011, 2012. Do any of you remember when that was?
I believe it was 2012.
That was our YouTube channel.
Yes.
I think our podcast was a little bit before that, but Brother Maceo would have to.
Yes,
our numbers.
Our podcast.
Our YouTube started in 2012.
We've been doing our podcast for quite a few years. I'd have to ask Brother Maceo when that happened. And our podcast at that time consisted of our preaching, and then we would load it directly to. We had a Mixler.
Yes, Mixler
channel.
We still have a Mixler channel
on Facebook, and then I don't know if there are any other platforms that's on.
The Mixler,
or just the podcast for our church in preaching.
Yes, it would go across. I mean, Apple, Google Podcast. It was linked to most of them.
So we've been doing this for quite a few years and had a wonderful. Have had wonderful results, and God has given us fruit out of this effort. the reason why that we did this is, many years ago, I was praying at the old church building here in Pueblo, and the scripture kept coming to me, the heavens declare his glory. The heavens declare his glory. And I thought, how do the heavens declare his glory? And we know that the angels came and declared. We know it was prophetic that the angels would come and declare the glory of God. But then all of a sudden it hit me that we're in a different paradigm than older generations of God's people. Just in the sense that the Bible, even though it was written at a particular time, and the first application is to talk about the existent time that the Word of God that came to those prophets was referring to in their present time. The Bible talks about the manifold wisdoms and revelation of God. There are many folds to the way that God expresses himself. And secondly, God is, and his word is for every time and generations. The Bible says that his mercy endureth unto all generations. And then in another place it said his mercy endureth forever. So he's not just a God of that day, he is a God of our day. And one example is in Jesus' day, when the Bible talks about the treasure hid in a field, that would be in an agricultural manner, because Israel at that time was predominantly an agricultural nation and still leads the world in agricultural science. They really do. But they are a very high-tech country today. And so we know that not only are there dirt fields to grow crops in, but there are radio fields and magnetic fields and fields that we can't even see that God created. And until the last few years, we were not even aware of those and how those fields affect our life. For example, if you put a screwdriver in a magnetic field long enough, it will assume the characteristics of that field. And so the heavens have all kinds of fields. They declare his glory. And I was thinking about this and how in a positive way we could use the heavens to declare the glory of God. And it could do so much more than just us being in one place at one time. Although, let me make it very clear, I still think that the best form of being a witness is one-on-one. That is the best way.
Right.
However, there are, I was just in Brazil preaching for Brother Alviar, I think it was his 35th anniversary, if I remember right. Wonderful time that we had there. And he had a man in his church take me back to the airport in Sao Paulo. Sao Paulo is the third largest city in the world. And it's just, you would see massive apartment complexes miles after miles after miles. In fact, when we got into the city of Sao Paulo, I think the driver drove for almost 2 hours before we got to the airport. After we had already entered into the city, it was that big. And surprisingly, in that part of Brazil, it was more like Europe. The highway systems and the road systems were very advanced. So we weren't just driving dirt roads. These were freeways. And so it's just a massive city. And I thought to myself, there are neighborhoods that we would never be able to knock every door in that neighborhood. We couldn't even get into those apartments. The security realm wouldn't even let us in those apartments to reach for those people. But the heavens declare his glory. And if there were a way in our world that we could get in there. And so that's where my mind started, and that's where we started the podcast. A few years later, I think it was around 2012, we come up with a wonderful idea to start a YouTube channel. to allow our services to not only be broadcasted but to be seen. I know some people feel intimidated about our worship. I don't feel one bit intimidated about seeing people worship God and other people seeing us worship God. It is a beautiful form. It is the original way that people worship God. And they sure don't have a problem showing how they worship at their ball games and all of the crazy stuff of the world, which is for things that are non-redeemable. And our worship goes to a God that redeems our soul, delivers our soul. And so we started this and have had tremendous feedback from this. And we may talk about some of that, Brother Pound, Brother Jeffrey, Brother Mitchell, just to give a foundation. However, we want to go even further than that, because now with social media, there are other avenues that we can use to drive people and also control algorithms, which actually gives us more of a presence in those fields of viewing and listening. So if this is the area that I have to turn it over to y'all, because this is not my generation. I served my generation. Now, I'm not an old man. I don't feel old. In fact, I fell feeding the dogs the other night in the snow. And that's the first time I have fallen in forever, because I'm still pretty quick on my feet. But there are lots of this area that I think that you guys could probably give us some input on this, give ideas to our listeners and viewers. And then our listeners and viewers, it would be so awesome if we had a way that we could have just a that's one of the next things we need to look at, is how we can have interaction with our viewers and our listeners while this is going on. So let's just start where we can give some of the results that we've had, and then talk about some of the ideas where we could interact with the social media and the websites and classes. I will be in a Bible study in Vietnam tomorrow with about 11 Vietnamese people on a Zoom call, and they regularly view our YouTube feed for our live feed services and stuff. So let's talk about this.
I'll jump in. We'll do some content, and then Brother Jeff, if you want to jump on with yours, what you kind of maybe talked about a little bit on Saturday, that was neat, just to see the growth. And I mean, that amount of time is. I won't do numbers. We might throw some numbers out there, but the big thing about if you're going to run a video feed is there should always be improvement, and it can be as simple as just the obvious ones, trying to improve your audio, trying to improve your video quality. A big one that's made kind of an impact on the growth factor this year, it sounds crazy, but is thumbnails on your videos. So when people are going to your channel, they see this. And that being said, people are looking for certain things. So the higher you rank, because you're always doing modification or changing or tagging, this will change how you begin to rank within the YouTube algorithm, and also within Google now, because it's going to index you and change your ranking system. And it has been effective. In fact, this Sunday morning, we had people from Kenya. I don't know how many, but they're jumping into the services. We do see that from Vietnam as well. And so there's a constant drive to try and improve the feed. Something that's hopefully not too far off is, and I kind of talked about this last week, and I am communicating with a company that does this, live video translation. So not subtitles, the voice, whoever's preaching they would be speaking whatever language. It doesn't necessarily have to be their voice, but I thought this would be a cool thing if it was accurate. That was my next, this is what I'm communicating. I don't know what their percentage of accuracy is, because that would be an issue if it was not accurate. But just trying to get the gospel across in any way, and then backlinking it through your social media pages, Facebook, Instagram. If you're using the X or formerly Twitter or whatever platforms you're using, there's some newer ones out there I don't even keep up on because they're just everywhere. Understanding how that make that rank locally within your community through backlinking, social media pushes, driving via your church. This is all called they'll say it's networking, but it's called backlinking. And then changing your scope geographically where you start popping up, and how you do that is via tagging and who's grabbing your traffic and pushing it within those geographical locations so you start pulling up there. And the more times people view this, your ranking changes, and then the people that are following those people, you start showing up in their feeds, and that just is that slow wheel that begins to turn and drive the traffic that's spreading the gospel. And that's just a little bit of how it works. So
I think with what Brother Pound is talking about, what Bishop is talking about, I've been on a bandwagon for a really long time that I believe every single church, I mean, I guess probably the best way would say best way to say it would be in the West, kind of the Western culture. I think it's best that every church has capabilities to access internet, the technology. I believe that they should have a live feed. Yeah. And I'm going to give you some numbers for why I believe that. Our church in Greeley, actually this was before Bishop took over. This was in 2020. So you took over right at the last of 2021, right?
Yes. I think October, wasn't it? Was it?
I think it was a little bit before
August
September.
Yeah.
No, it was August because you had just re-signed the lease. But anyway, so August, September, somewhere in there. And so the channel our YouTube channel has been going for a little over 3 years now. And right now we're sitting at about 133 subscribers, which is good, That's amazing. Thank God for that. In 3 years' time. But what's so amazing to me is that in the last 12 months, we have had a total of 14,000, almost 15,000 views in the last 12 months. That's with the total subscribers of about 132. So, we're getting a lot of views from people that are not subscribed to our channel. Yeah. And then I talked a little bit about this to our church here and to the church in Pueblo. We are seeing, out of that number of subscribers and views, we are seeing a total of impressions of 193,000 impressions.
Crazy.
Now, Brother Jordan can explain a lot better to you what an impression is, but the easiest way that I know how to explain it is if they can see your channel in any way, yes, whether it be they're scrolling through and it just scrolls across the screen, or if it's in the videos after, next to be viewed, or whatever, if it's, somehow we're caught up in that algorithm that Brother Jordan was just talking about. If they see our channel in any way, if any one of our videos comes across, go ahead.
In my way, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, Brother Jeffrey, but algorithms are those fields that I'm talking about. And can we get in those fields and influence, and that's in my mind, that's how I look at stuff, because first and foremost, it's always going to go back to the scripture to me. And I don't want to go on this rabbit trail here, but I want to explain that so that people will understand when I say the heavens declare his glory. Yes. That's the way I'm reading this stuff in this context.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, when you understand the algorithms, like, every quarter or so, YouTube or whatever social media platform that you are on will put out new regulations or laws or whatever that they're putting out of how the algorithms will work. Well, average Joe like myself doesn't have time to sit down and read however many hundreds of pages there are to learn the new algorithms. But if you can learn them, you can get caught up in them.
Yes.
Just personal story about that is I posted something funny about me and my wife one time on my Instagram, and it got 2-point-something million views.
Yeah.
My moment of fame,
That's
but if
Unbeknown to
understand
you,
those
you got
algorithms-
caught up in the winds of that field, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll catch you into it and just drive you to the top. Anyway, that if you understand those, that's how people stay viral. That's how they stay in that way. But anyway, so we got 193,000 impressions, or the capability of people seeing our. With that, we a click-through rate of 4.6%, which equates to almost 9,000 people that when they saw an impression of our church, these are brand new people that have never seen our church channel, period, ever. They clicked through for an average of 8 minutes and 22 seconds. So that got me to thinking, okay, what did they see in that 8 minutes and 22 seconds?
Yeah.
What did they hear? Did they hear some good apostolic preaching? Did they hear some good apostolic singing, worship? If they averaged 8 minutes and 22 seconds, there's people that stayed longer, there's people that stayed less. What were they listening to? So, and I could go on and on. Throughout this, we've got only about 50% of our activity on our personal YouTube channel for CGC Greeley is in the United States. Vast majority, or I guess the other 50%, would be in these countries: India, the Philippines, United Kingdom, Canada, South Africa, Jamaica, and France. So we have a worldwide audience. Like Brother Jordan was saying, he can see there's people popping in from Kenya, and that's in Pueblo. And we're in Greeley, we're reaching different countries. Well, what would it be like if literally every church, it don't matter how big or small the church is, if every single church just put together a YouTube channel and a live feed for every single service?
Yeah.
To me, it is the fulfillment of Matthew chapter 24, where Jesus said, the whole world shall hear the gospel, and then the Son of Man shall come. It's amazing what we are capable of when we're tying this to what Bishop's saying, getting caught up in those algorithms, what Brother Jordan is saying, understanding those algorithms, and then using them to our advantage.
Yeah.
We have the capability of winning the world. I really believe that.
Yes. There's a couple ways to look at it. The algorithm, they do change quite frequently, and individually we all fall into an algorithm based upon how you look at things on the web or YouTube or social media content. So you get placed into a certain type of algorithm. They start feeding you content based upon web activity. And then as a distributor, you are placed into an algorithm. And you can play with that somewhat based upon tagging, based upon what
That's what I wanted somebody to talk about tagging.
Tagging's
what if all
important.
Pentecostals were tagging all of this stuff?
So tagging's important because the algorithm looks at the tags, and that changes kind of your category. You can play with the algorithm. I like to call it backlinking, because what you're doing is you're throwing a video out there. It gets shared. The algorithm will read that tag and say, hey, this is where the content originated. And if somebody looks at it within a certain time frame, a few seconds, now you start popping up within their feed. The algorithm grabs you and puts you there. And then your ranking plays into it, because depending on how many times it's viewed, you begin to rank higher within that algorithm or on those people's feeds. And so there's a lot that we couldn't cover in one podcast, but This is where the type of content you push. I mean, I suggest to look at trends, see what's really popular within reason, because this can become an obsession. There are some people that are on YouTube that have some really good, solid ways of doing things. And don't just study it from a social media perspective, study it from a network driving perspective. Because trends change a lot, but the fundamentals of how network traffic works do not change that much. And there's always new ways of driving that traffic. But I agree with it. To me, every impression is kind of like a digital outreach flyer. The potential is there. The seed's kind of been planted, and who knows what can happen. And to me, that's exciting. It's like you go on outreach in one service and hit several thousand people at one time. It's pretty awesome. So
Well, and the cost factor.
yeah,
One person in a church, if they learn this and if they're committed to it, I made this statement, and I think Brother Jeffrey reposted this. Entitlement is about self. Ministry is about the mission and the call. What are your motives? That's been shared I don't know how many times. Well, to me, that's the root of any kind of ministry. So if you're in this and it's all about you and you getting likes and all of that, that's the wrong reason. But if you're in this to drive people to find the answer to the hunger for their soul, there is no other gospel. We believe that. And if we really believe that, then we have a commission from Jesus Christ to go into all the world. The world is at our fingertips today. And there are young people that are growing up that are catching up that. We have friends in the apostolic world that are doing both. They are making massive amounts of money for their family and for their ministries. At the same time, they are propagating the gospel all over the world. And so they understand that. That's what I'm talking about. This generation understands that. What would happen if we did what Brother Jeffrey said and everybody was doing this? And then we took it even further. As I was sitting there listening to Brother Jeffrey and Brother Pound, I thought, we have a live feed.
yeah,
And Brother Pound explained to me that channel actually, until our services begin, which would be at 11 o'clock on Sunday morning, 7:30 on Tuesday night, 7:30 on Friday night, and 6 o'clock on Sunday. And then the rest of the time, that live feed channel is blank.
yeah,
So if you click onto it, it'll just show a picture when the next service will happen. Well, what if we had all kinds of what do they call video clips that they post on our, let's use the word that kids are familiar with today, reels or stories. And we filled that constantly with a blurb here and there. In so many hours and so many seconds, service will be starting here, but that we could show. For example, we do Be Free. Thank you, Sister Beth Bouse. Shout out to Sister Beth Bouse for Be Free program, which is a drug and alcohol and anger management and sexual addiction program. What if we did some story or reel to go on that live feed? I love the idea that Brother Urshan come up with. I'm kind of jealous that he come up with it and I didn't, but we have the same reason for it. His seed application where people can round up the change when they purchase something and they can put it on that app. And they what a great place to advertise that program on our live feeds. If every church was doing that, the millions of dollars that would come into missions, and every dime of that is going into missions. All I ask, Brother Urshan, is as we give you this advertisement, just remember Vietnam. And I'm sure he will, because he has a heart for that.
Since you brought that up, that app went live yesterday, which was Sunday the 7th, okay? And so you can go to seedgiver.org, and this is a shameless free plug for them because I believe in this.
I do too.
Seedgiver.org, you can sign up, and it's a roundup app where all of your extra change will go towards missions. People do it for investment. People do it for all kinds of other things. But it's like giving to missions, but you're never going to miss it. And their mantra is, with your change, you can change the world. And just there's so many ways right now that we can do this. But I do want to go back to something that you mentioned, Bishop, the cost factor, right? And social media is an advertisement platform. People are paying huge money. That's how people are making money on like Instagram and all this. Why? Because the most valuable thing in our life is time. So, with that being said, in our area, this is a vision God's given me for Greeley. It's not really my vision, it's His vision that He's revealed to us in Greeley. We have a lot of communities that are HOAs, gated communities, that we can never get into, period.
Yeah.
But if we were to put in an ad on social media, Instagram, we use Instagram and Facebook, what we could never go into those doors, just like in Sao Paulo, Brazil, we could never knock those doors. But we put an ad on Instagram or Facebook for, I mean, it can be as cheap as $20, and you can reach, maybe 1,000 people or more.
Yeah.
That amount of money that you are putting into it. Whereas
You
this
can't
year
do
we
1,000 flyers for. There's no way you can do 1,000.
We bought 17,000 flyers this year. Actually, Hope Corps did. Pueblo Hope Corps helped us. Bought 17,000 flyers. I think it was somewhere around $2,500, right? And we put that into our city, and we've seen great results from it.
Yeah.
I believe if you sow bountifully, you're going to reap bountifully. But we're not just going to sow in passing out flyers and personal evangelism every day and outreach Saturdays. Like, I believe if we can put every effort, the sower went forth to sow. Some of his seed fell on good ground. Some of his seed fell on thorny ground. Some of his seed fell on the stony ground and by the wayside. But even in the good soil, the Bible said some brought forth 30, 60, and 100-fold.
Yeah.
So what are we doing? We're just casting the seed wherever we can.
Yeah.
Wherever we can.
And I think it's important that this does not take the place of personal evangelism.
No.
No. Nothing will ever take the place of person, but it is another resource that God has given us. Yeah. One of the things that I'd like to do here, Brother Jeffrey and Brother Mitchell and Brother Pound, is you guys would be better at explaining reels and where these go and how to, and I'm sure that most of our listeners, they know 10 times more about this than I do. We're just trying to give you ideas to become so radically sold out to your church that your reels and your stories are not about yourself.
No.
But your reels and your stories are about how God has created you to be a witness to this world.
Yeah.
And that's where we want feedback from a lot of our viewers and listeners, because some of you are in that world and you have ideas that are just phenomenal. I thought of ideas on how to do biblical games, and then sell them as apps on your app platforms, and that money not only provides for the people that create them, but while they're playing these games, they're learning the Word of God. They're learning Acts 2:38. They're learning that Jesus is God, and there are creative people in our apostolic worlds that can do that, and God will provide for them while they preach the gospel to the world.
Yes.
Well, I don't want to take up all the time tonight. I know Brother Mitchell hasn't said much. I'm hoping he's just coming up with the most genius idea right now.
It's smoldering over here.
But
so.
I think he's
Yeah, he's
starving to
getting ready.
death. When he's starving, he gets kind of quiet.
Well, my aunt Anna Ballinger called me a couple weeks ago because I had shared with our family that God had put a passion in my heart to make impacts on a great scale, and I believe that this social media world will enable us to do that. But she called me with an incredible idea, and actually, the idea came from Bishop Wilson because uh, he was talking about, I have kids, and we got all these little babies that are coming up in the church, and he just had a brand new great grandbaby, I think. And so I think this is what really pushed his mind to this. And now there was a seemingly a harmless app. It was a kids app called Cocomelon. And, it told like the ABCs and the Itsy Bitsy Spider and just all these lullabies. Well, all of a sudden, through time, these videos start showing a household with two dads
Yeah.
in the household.
Yeah.
So this seemingly harmless app,
Brought that algorithm.
all of a sudden,
yeah.
they're trying to be woke to catch the algorithm, whatever. And I want to tell you, there are great Christian apps for your kids. There's a couple of ones called Minnow. I don't want to get anybody mad, but there's another one called Superbook. There's these great Christian apps that you can have for your kids. But there's not really a good app that is a Christian, apostolic, not just Christian, apostolic app out there. And so this is like the ideas that they're throwing around. And my aunt called me and said, what would you do about this? And I said, well, first off, I'd love to do it, but I don't know anything about animation, right? You have to create the idea of a character.
Yeah.
And then you have to create the animation of that character and build a whole platform around the animation of this character. But there are young people out there that, intelligent, apostolic young people that know how to do all this.
Yeah.
You could have the capabilities to do this. And, these other apps, they're a subscription-based app to where this would tie directly. We know everything we do is not about money, but I do believe that the laborer is worthy of his hire. And when God blesses something like that, it's the model of business as mission, where through the blessing of God coming to your life, you are now blessing the rest of the world. I don't know, maybe that's just an idea that I'm throwing out there, but there are kids out there that are young people that have this capability, and you can do this.
Well, and I don't want to. This is not a rabbit trail. This is an attachment. Let me attach this thumbnail to that. I think a lot of ideas that we consider as generosity sometimes damage people because they get something for nothing. And David said, I will not offer up to God that which has cost me nothing. And I think somewhere we got to get rid of the entitlement mentality in Pentecost. There's a place for generosity. There's a place for giving. There's a place for all of that. But there's also a place for helping somebody out that's helped you out. Life is a trade-off. And you're investing in that. And while it's blessing you, you're blessing those that have blessed you. And that's what God told Abraham. I will bless them that bless you. There's a trade-off there. So I love that idea, Brother Jeffrey. And I think that there's a jillion ideas. I've known people that have went viral with the iPhone.
Yeah.
And iPhones can do amazing things with the cameras they have today. Now, I don't know about Android, but I do know that iPhones are like that. And
They're there. They're there too.
okay,
Yeah.
all right. I'm just checking.
I know there'll be debate about that in this room, but that's okay.
They're almost as good.
It's all in the perspective. Here's the big thing is it is just a tool, that another resource, like you said, Bishop. The other part is that we have a generation across the world that's going to be there anyways. We have a world that they live in the internet. They live in social media. And that's another debate for another time. But the bottom line is they're going to be there anyways. And what are they seeing? Because there is push content. There's the algorithm. There's a lot of things you can go down the rabbit holes of here. But what we want to happen is them to come across the truth, the gospel. So what do we do to make sure that, we may never be able to get to their house or wherever they live, but that somewhere in their daily life, when they're spending 8 hours on social media, approximately on average, that they come across the gospel or something that catches their attention. Hey, what's this? This is different. It gives a different feel.
I know you guys won't approach that subject, but I will. Try to be as generous as I can be. But I'm telling you, brothers and sisters, that you can stick your head in the sand all you want to, and you can act like that you're not a part of it. But in the whole time that you're doing that, you have your conservative formats where you're logging in, and that is social media. You can yell against it all you want to, but that's social media. And when you're logging into those programs and you're talking to one another, that's social media. Yeah. And there are other things that we can talk about. If you have a smartphone, you have access to everything that everybody else has. And you can say, well, I don't watch it and I don't listen to it. Neither do we. But we do watch apostolic services. You could. The restriction is not from us. The restriction, you're not restricted by that phone any more than you're restricted to watch anything else that's on that phone. If you have a smartphone, if you have any kind of phone anymore, even if you have a flip phone,
they have YouTube.
There's Wi-Fi and YouTube on a flip phone. It's on all of them. Yeah. So if to just disconnect from the world is not doing what God told us to do. We can go on the offense and find ways to protect one another. It's a scary world.
Yeah.
But so is Babylon. Yeah. You can't just disconnect from this world, and that's a subject for another time. But the thing we're trying to do is come up with creative ways where people go on the offense and they use this to declare the glory of God and to preach the gospel to the world. And I believe that God's people are the most creative people in the world. If we will encourage them, they will come up with ways to show the rest of the world this glorious gospel of Jesus Christ.
Yes.
They're doing it. We're seeing them do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is the way I look at this. This is the way I teach it to my kids. This is a tool. And how you use a tool is to be used at certain times in certain places within a certain time frame. You don't sit there and play with it all day, and there's a time to use it and a time not to use it. But the way that our society has pushed technology so hard, it becomes more and more entangled into everything we do. And so there still needs to be a step-by-step process, I believe, in how we utilize the tool. There's got to be a balance to everything we're saying. But what we're talking about tonight is if we're going to use this, let's use it effectively to reach the world. Let's build a community around just a digital form of outreach, of spreading the gospel and reaching people that otherwise may never be reached. Only God knows. Just a tool.